What's going on, everyone? In today's video, we're going to be taking a deep dive look at the market for this week. We're going to cover some awesome setups for tomorrow, but we also have some giant news to cover related to potentially the biggest strike in US history. On top of that, we have some giant news with Netflix as well. They are cracking down big time on this password sharing. And then to put the cherry on top, we have Jerome Powell back again this week with some interesting events. So make sure to stick with us all the way to the end of today's video. We have some great setups for tomorrow. But Tom, let's not waste any time and let's get right into it.
Yeah, the first thing I really want to hit on today is the earnings for this week, Mike. It looks like there's really not much coming up, maybe FedEx on Tuesday and after hours. But as far as earnings go this week, we are off the hook finally. I know we've had a lot the past couple weeks, and, it's been making the market get pretty volatile here. And I'm glad to see the SPY continuing to hold up, but I will say Friday was a pretty bad day for the overall market. If we actually go look at a lot of stocks like AMD, NVIDIA, some of the bigger stocks like Microsoft, Apple, these stocks took some pretty bad tumbles there on Friday. Specifically looking at Microsoft, Mike, they were actually running up into Friday, making new highs, and then they actually had that big tumble back to the downside. There's a lot of potential plays here, I think, for this week, back to the downside, especially if we keep seeing the market fall down and stuff like this. And I know one of the big overextended stocks lately has been Netflix. This stock has been really up a lot lately, hitting this big 448 resistance, almost triple topping here. And we saw some amazing news come out over the weekend with their signups. I know that they've been doing the password sharing crackdowns. And man, Mike, a lot of people told me, hey, I'm not going to go ahead and pay for it. If they start cracking down, I'm done with Netflix, But hey, it looks like a lot of people are actually still signing up for it. If we look at the chart here, the new policy came in on password sharing, and you can see those signups really starting to shoot to the upside, even higher than during COVID, which is amazing. And, for a stock like Netflix, which relies on those subscriber numbers, that is huge for them to see this. I cannot wait for them to report their next earnings report, Mike. This might be an insane one.
Exactly. So it's just crazy to think about, but Netflix has had the 4 single largest days of new signups in quite a while, which is great to see. As you pointed out, it's even, more of a boom right now than it was during COVID when the whole world was locked down. So that's pretty crazy. And I know some people definitely are not too happy that after all these years, they're finally getting booted from the Netflix account that's shared with 80 other people.
Yeah, I actually had that happen to me. I actually got booted off the one I was on. So it happens. And, that's one of the things that should actually help Netflix, though. I know in some of those Latin countries, we saw studies where they were testing it. And at first, it hurt them a little bit. But then as time went on, more and more people started signing up. And I think we're actually starting to see that happen here. And looking at their stock, Mike, Netflix stock is something else right now. It's up a lot from low to high. So this seems like pretty good news, but I'm not necessarily sure I'm overly bullish on Netflix at this point. We're up 175% from that low down there back at the end of 2022, and we're just now getting to that big resistance, very close to 450, 460, somewhere right around there. And you can see that that's right where we had that big gap with earnings at the beginning of 2022. So it's definitely a big area of resistance that we're getting to. The stock's up a lot, and we had some pretty bad movement Friday. Like, man, Mike, look at Netflix on Friday, Microsoft, Apple. We saw a lot of tech stocks fall down.
Yeah, no doubt. And, I just want to touch on Netflix just a little bit more because I agree with you in the sense of it is kind of overbought right now. And Netflix is a stock I own for the long term. And I feel like if we see a nice dip back down, maybe to in a good world, under 300, but I don't know if we're going to see a retest that low again. But, even if we see a dip back down to support right around 330 or maybe 320 or even 300, I think that could be a good buying point. But right now, when it's up 175% from its lows, it's hard to buy it now. Yes, it might have some awesome momentum in the short term with this password sharing crackdown news, but I think it would be smarter to wait on this one.
Yeah, and I'm really hoping that we open up Monday morning and maybe some of this news or they start to get some good momentum coming back, because Friday, that was a pretty bad rejection. And we're getting close to a pretty big level, like 450 and 460. Those are pretty big levels here on Netflix. So I'm definitely going to be watching it, Mike. If we can maybe break out above this upper resistance, I think it could be a potential momentum play back up. But personally, I'm actually going to be watching it off to the downside with a couple of these other stocks that are, kind of overextended right now also. And Mike, talking about crazy events this week and stuff that might impact the market, we are going to have Powell speaking. It looks like he's going to have a testimony on Wednesday there and Thursday. So he's going to be speaking to the Senate Banking Committee. Definitely sounds like an interesting time. I know that they always hit him with a ton of questions, and it sometimes moves the market. I'm not expecting anything too crazy, but just be careful. There'll probably be a little bit of volatility coming from this.
Yeah, so we just had that FOMC interest rate decision last week, and I know a bunch of people were like, all right, finally, we're done with Powell for a little bit, but nope, Powell is right back at us. We have him twice this week with the testimonies, just like Tom said, so definitely be aware of that. While these events are important, most of the time they're not as important as like the interest rate decisions, but you guys know whenever Powell speaks, you gotta listen, as he's one of the most powerful people in the world. So keep that in mind, 10 a.m. Eastern on Wednesday and Thursday. On another note, I saw some very interesting data on Yahoo Finance today, where basically it shows what happens in markets like this after we see Fed hike pauses. So if we look at this chart, we can see that most of the time when we do see a Fed hike pause, the market ends up going to the upside in a pretty strong way. In like the worst situation that we've seen in, related to Fed hike pauses, the market is break even, but in the best situation, it pops up by like 15%. And like on average, the market pops up by like 8 to 9% in the 90 days after the pause. So that's great to see. And, the multi-billion-dollar question is, will this time be like the average?
Yeah, and I really hope it is, because, we're starting to finally get so high in the market where, I don't know about you, Mike, but I'm getting very, very scared of a pullback coming in. And I think that we can definitely continue up a little bit more here. Like if we look at the SPY, it's still pretty far off its all-time highs. Like, let's just say, we do go up another 5-10% maybe, like somewhere like right around that average, that would put us retesting maybe that 470 resistance overhead, 475. That would be really close to that all-time high on the SPY. So that very well might be the case, Mike. We might run up into some of these resistances and then maybe start to come down a little bit as the Feds start to maybe give us more insight into what they're doing in the future. But I don't know. It's very interesting right now. Whenever you look at the market, we just keep running and running and running. And that pause news is definitely good news to keep us going, in my opinion. And, with the way the economy works, Mike, what do we always say? It never goes as planned, right? There's always things to happen unexpectedly. And, during COVID and just after COVID, we had a lot of stocks run up unexpectedly. And right now, some of these stocks like NVIDIA are so high over their all-time highs, it's just blowing expectations out of the water.
Exactly. So definitely keep that in mind. But Tom, we cannot forget about the crazy news we're seeing with UPS right now and how potentially this could be the biggest strike against a single company in US history. So basically 340,000 UPS workers are looking to strike against the company if there is no contract by July 31st. And this is so significant because UPS is the largest shipper in the entire country, and they move enough goods to account for about 6% of the United States GDP, which is, mind-blowing to think about. And, if UPS has a big strike, that would impact the entire economy. Like, think about how reliant this economy right now is on just shipping overall. It's just crazy, and it's such a key component of the economy. And it's like, if you have the biggest shipper in the country, go dark, that would be a giant problem. And essentially, the UPS workers are striking because they want higher wages, more full-time work, and the elimination of what they call forced overtime. They just want better working conditions. So we'll see what happens, but this is definitely like a black swan event that has the potential to be pretty nasty.
Yeah, and I like what it says here. Like it says a lot of new workers are disgruntled where they're not making as much as like the old timers at the companies. I'm sure there's like a lot of problems that these workers have. And we see this happen all the time, Mike, like big chances of strikes, whether it's Starbucks talking about strikes or Amazon or UPS or even like the USPS. Like there's these strikes that go on between the unions and whatever business or entity runs them all the time. And I would not be surprised if something weird ended up happening with this, Mike, especially since they account for 6% of the US GDP per their own estimates. That is a lot. I mean, I would have never thought that they were that influenced on the economy, but I know how big they are, and they're a pretty big monopoly. I know there's others like FedEx and DHL, but man, nothing comes close to UPS in my eyes. But hey, I'm sure there's a lot of viewers out there that work for UPS. So, hey, if you're somebody who agrees with this, let us know in the comments, maybe some reasons why you think that they should, go on strike or something. I'll be interested to read some of those because I know that there's definitely some people in here who, whether they're drivers or work at the warehouses or what, there's probably some viewers out there who work at UPS.
Oh, without a doubt. I know that for a fact. And, what's so interesting about this scenario is like, we're not just talking about, any company out there. It's like UPS has such a giant influence on the economy where it's like, if we see a strike, that can be very, very, very bad. And like I said, this is set to be the biggest strike against a single company in the entire history of the United States. So it's pretty crazy, and just keep this event on your radar.
Yeah, definitely. And looking at UPS's stock on like a daily chart level, Mike, I'll tell you, it's actually not looking too good right now. If we actually draw some trend lines here to the downside, it's definitely in more of like a downwards trend here lately. There is a big support down here, very, very close to like 150, 155. So maybe if we hold that, it'll be okay. But I don't know, if we have some bad news, they break support, they could maybe start to fill some of these gaps down here, and that would be pretty rough.
We shall see. But Tom, it is now time for some setups for tomorrow. And one stock I'm watching very closely is Microsoft. So they have some decent support at $340 a share and $339 a share. They actually just broke all-time highs last week, and they actually did have I wouldn't say a horrible day on Friday, but it definitely wasn't good. I will be watching this one to the downside. For tomorrow, ideally, I'd like to see a break below 340 and 339, and I'd like to ride that momentum down.
Yeah, I mean, hey, I don't blame you. The market's so high right now. I'm not going to lie, though. It seems like everything just keeps going up lately, no matter what happens. Oh, man, I don't know. Microsoft last week was amazing for some breakouts. That's going to be crazy this week if we keep falling down. I'm going to watch Tesla actually to the upside here. I think that they could possibly continue. There's a big double top up here, potentially right around 265. But if we're able to get above there, I will look for calls. Why go against the market right now? All it does is go up. I know a lot of people have been doing well following it. And I think that if Tesla breaks out, what I like about them is on Friday, Tesla didn't care that the market fell. We look at Apple, Microsoft, like you mentioned, other stocks like that, even Netflix, they fell down, but we actually had Tesla holding up well for once, which was a good sign for them anyways.
Good stuff. Another stock I'm watching pretty closely is Netflix, and I might get some heat for this one, but, because they did have some pretty good news, but I am watching it for a break below of the support level at 427. If it breaks below that, I will be watching it to the downside, but with this one, I'm also going to give like some upside potential as well. It's very possible that Netflix can just have some significant momentum to the upside tomorrow, and like, if we wake up and it's at 450 and it's just booming to the upside with great volume, then it's like you probably don't want to be shorting that one. So I will be watching this one very closely tomorrow. If it breaks below support, I'll be watching it for puts, and if it's booming, then I'll also be looking at it for calls.
Yeah, exactly. It's very important right now to be adaptable. The overall market has been going all over the place. And sometimes, these big tech stocks are having big pullbacks like this, but then they'll be right back up the next morning. So very adaptable. I think that's a very important thing to be in this scenario here. And looking at, plays to the downside, I'm really watching ExxonMobil. This stock has been really weak the past couple weeks. They've been really falling back off. If we're able to get below this 104.50 support from last week, I'm going to go ahead and look at puts. I'm looking at oil to the downside as well. If we do start to have a recession later this year, I think crude oil can start to fall down, and they're like really close to support. So if that breaks and these oil companies start losing some profits, I think that the puts will end up being pretty good. And these oil companies are very overextended on some daily charts too.
Alrighty, well, it is now time for the momentum plays. With the first one, we have AMD to the downside.
AMD, very hyped up stock lately, to say the least. One of the most popular ones. I love it to the downside, Mike. I actually traded it down last week a little bit. Go ahead and make them fall below 119. If they break that, maybe target 116. That's a pretty big support coming up.
All right, with the next one, we have Meta also to the downside.
Yeah, Meta, that was cool to see them starting to pull back finally here. If they can fall below 280, watch them to the downside. This one actually might be my favorite one, Mike. It's such a big level there at that even 280 level.
All right, and now with the last one, we have PayPal to the upside.
Yeah, PayPal is real nice to see them continuing up. If they can break 67, look at calls. I know that they were above 67 a little bit, but that was a huge hit end of day there.
All right, so if PayPal breaks above that resistance, we're watching it for calls. And then if Meta and AMD break below their support levels, we are watching those ones for puts. But Tom, it is now time for my favorite part of the video, which is the big money $3.79 million trade of the day. And we are looking at none other than NIO. This stock has been all over the place, and it had a ton of hype back in the COVID days, and they've fallen quite a bit since then, but they have been holding up pretty well lately. More specifically with this trade, someone dumped essentially like $3.8 million into the NIO 10 strike call options that expire on June 21st of 2024. Essentially, if you don't know how options work, this is a trade where the higher NIO goes up, the more millions this trader will make. Right now, NIO is trading for right around $9.40. $10 is very close to the money. And, this is quite a bit amount of money going into this trade, just under $3.8 million. I do like this setup, but it might take some time. Like, I'm not necessarily expecting NIO to be up 30% tomorrow, but, I think if you give this one time, it could be pretty good.
Yeah, exactly. It's hard to even get NIO's chart to look good on a daily, Mike. That's how low they are. Like, this stock was having highs of, 66, 67, fell all the way down to like $7 recently. It's hard to even get the chart to cooperate with us on the daily, but it's definitely starting to come up. They're getting a lot of good momentum coming in lately. I know there's been a lot of hype around them too. I've seen a lot of people in our Discord and just talk on, the internet in general about NIO to the upside. Like, people are scooping up shares down here. Now, I know that doesn't necessarily mean that the stock's going to go up, but it's a good sign to see buyers starting to come in. They're starting to finally get some momentum back, which is good. And I think that with the amount of time they have on this, it's perfect. There's a year, it's right around the money. If this stock goes to like 14, 15, if this stock gets to $20, these people are probably going to make, hell, Mike, like 7 million or something crazy like that. So it's going to be a fun play if NIO keeps going up. And what I love about NIO is that it doesn't care about the US market. Look at that correlation to SPY there, negative 0.24. I love that, because if our markets dip a little bit here end of year, NIO will probably do just fine.
Yeah, exactly. That's a great point. It's like when you're in a market like we're in right now, it's like it's hard to short it because obviously it's just been booming. At the same time, it's hard to, long it when you have some stocks up 300%. So it's tough, where it's like when you go to some of these stocks that do not care at all what the SPY does, that's a good thing. So I like your point there, and I think NIO is definitely one to watch, but I just want to emphasize, give this one time. Don't expect it to be up 40% tomorrow.
Yeah, exactly. And it is a China stock, so we always have to keep that in the back of our minds too. There's always volatility with that. They could come out with like a weird black swan event or something like that at any time too.
You know it. So, Tom, for this week, I think we're set for a good week. We have some stocks right around all-time highs like Microsoft and Apple and some of those other crazy tech stocks. At the same time, we are starting to see a little bit of selling pressure. I think we should be really prepared to be adaptable this week. Whether the market continues its massive uptrend or whether we see a pullback, I think this week should be the week of adaptability. We'll call it that. Let's make this week a good one. Let's trade the market as it comes. We'll follow those support and resistance lines, and we'll trade the breakouts as they happen. Do you have any other input for this week, Tom?
Yeah, it's going to be a good one. One thing I will say is keep gold and silver on watch. I'm just really watching this lately. I feel like GLD is starting to bounce off this 180 support area. If this starts to bounce, we see silver move and some fear creeps in, I think that these metals will be awesome to trade. So just keep those on the radar too. They're pretty fun to trade and they don't move necessarily with the SPY or anything like that.
Sounds good. Well, thank you guys so much for watching. And if you like our videos, make sure to subscribe. When you subscribe, you'll see our videos recommended to you more often. And in every single video, we always talk about the most important news you need to know about. We spend hours going through countless articles and data and all that good stuff to make our videos nice and easy to watch in 20 minutes or less ideally. So make sure to subscribe. We also cover a bunch of great setups in every single video. When you subscribe, you'll see our videos recommended to you more often. And last but not least, we want to give a giant shout out to today's member of the day, Floyd B, in the YouTube comments. Thank you so much for the support, and we really appreciate you. Besides that, guys, let's have an amazing week.